All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecture writer, and historian. So it is Saturday, September 25th, 2021. And I wanted to come on for a few minutes and talk briefly about a 10-week online course that I teach on Saturdays called From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968, and just give a quick recap of what we've covered in the class. So normally the class meets on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today we're going to start right around 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we deal with history from the Civil War, which is 1861 to 1865, through the Jim Crow era, World War I, World War II, Black Power movement. We look at Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended. What were our successes? What were the laws and policies put in place to oppress us, etc., so we can better understand what's taking place today. Okay. So in class number one, now the class is a 10-week online course. You can register for it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. Okay. So I'm going to post the information here on the thread of the broadcast. So in class number one, we dealt with some events leading up to the U.S. Civil War taking place. Okay. We talked about the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. And the Louisiana Purchase is connected to the Haitian Revolution. France is fighting against the Haitians, and they're trying to raise money. They almost go bankrupt fighting against the Haitians. And they sell 828,000 square miles of land to the U.S. for about $15 million. And the U.S. is going to carve out about 15 states out of that land that they got from the Louisiana Purchase. This is in 1803. President Thomas Jefferson is the president at the time. And this increases the need for more slave labor. Also, the Louisiana Purchase increased the need for more slave labor. So we dealt with the Louisiana Purchase. We talked about Texas becoming a state in the Union in 1845. Texas comes into the Union as a slave-holding state. We dealt with the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848. And the Mexican-American War ends with what's known as the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo gives the U.S. The territory that today makes up California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Nevada. All that land, those 6 states, all that land the U.S. got from Mexico. Mexico loses about a third of its territory as a result of the Mexican-American War. Then you have to organize that land, and they're trying to determine which states are going to have slavery and which states are going to be free states. So you have what's known as the Compromise of 1850. And the Compromise of 1850, part of it consists of 5 bills. And part of that dealt with determining which states are going to have slavery, which states slavery will be legal, which states are not going to have slavery, because they try to keep a balance between slaveholding states and free states. But one of the most important things in the one of the most important bills in the Compromise of 1850 is known as the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And the Fugitive Slave Act, what this did was this intensified the abolitionist movement and caused more runaway slaves to run away into Canada. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. You have the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. In the Kansas-Nebraska Act, what this did was this left it up to those living in the territory of Kansas and Nebraska to determine whether or not they want to have slavery, as opposed to it being dictated to them by the U.S. government. And this infuriates a lot of abolitionists. And the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 leads to the Republican Party being formed in 1854 as a direct backlash to the Kansas-Nebraska Act and as a counter to the Democratic Party at the time. Contrary to popular belief, the majority of the time that slavery existed in this country, you didn't have a Democratic Party or a Republican Party. Democratic Party wasn't founded to 1828, and the Republican Party wasn't founded to 1854. So you have the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and then the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is going to lead to what's known as Bleeding Kansas. And Bleeding Kansas was armed conflict between pro-slavery groups and anti-slavery groups. And it's armed conflict. You're going to have about 55 people who were killed between 1855 and 1859. So that's a lot of what we talked about in class number 1. We're leading up to the U.S. Civil War, which is 1861 to 1865. And we know December 20th, 1860, you're going to have South Carolina, which is the first state to secede from the Union. South Carolina is the first state to secede from the Union. And this is 6 weeks after Abraham Lincoln becomes president-elect. Okay, so we show you a timeline of history and understand cause and effect of these events as well. A lot of these things we learned about in school, American history class, social studies, etc. But oftentimes when we learn this, a lot of those things we forgot about in school, 1. But 2, we aren't shown the chronology of these historical events, and we aren't shown cause and effect to really understand this. Okay, and we take you throughout history to bring you up through the civil rights movement, etc., and the Black Power movement to understand how we got to where we are today. So in class number 2, we talked about things like the political party known as the Know Nothing Party, the American Nativist Party, the Know Nothing Party that existed in the 1840s and 1850s. They're dying out in the 1850s, but right around the 1840s, 1850s, the Know Nothing Party. We talked about we're leading up to the Civil War. We dealt with Abraham Lincoln becoming president-elect November 6, 1860. And when he has his inaugural address, March 4th, 1861, he talks about how he has no intention of abolishing slavery in territories where slavery is legal. Okay. And you already have states that have already started seceding from the Union, and he's trying to keep the Union together. The Civil War is going to start the next month, April 12, 1861. Okay, so we take you throughout history. So in today's class, one of the things we're going to talk about is how Lincoln was not an abolitionist. We're going to dispel some myths about Lincoln and slavery and emancipation, things like this. We do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips, articles, book references. There's a ton of information. This is a 10-week online course from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we deal with the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment. We deal with the U.S. Constitution. We deal with the Reconstruction Era. Reconstruction Era is a critical period of history because there was a failure with Reconstruction. You have a collapsing of the Freedmen's Bank in 1874. $2.9 million worth of our deposits were lost when the Freedmen's Bank collapsed. You have the Freedmen's Bureau, created in March of 1865 to assist the newly freed African Americans as well as destitute white people. So we go through and look at all this history that took place and look at it chronologically. For a 14-year period, the U.S. government took steps to try and integrate the nation's newly freed Black population into society. This is the Reconstruction Era, which is 1865 to 1877, and it ends with what's known as the Compromise of 1877 between Republicans and Democrats to remove the Union troops out of the South which were protecting to a certain extent the rights of newly freed African Americans. The Compromise of 1877. Between 1863 and 1877, the U.S. government undertook the task of integrating nearly 4 million formerly enslaved people into society, after the Civil War bitterly divided the country over the issue of slavery. A white slaveholding South that had built its economy and culture on slave labor was now forced by its defeat in a war that claimed 620,000 lives to change its economic, political, and social relations with African Americans. So the Reconstruction era the Civil War changed the country. Reconstruction era is trying to rebuild the South and integrate African Americans into society. You have rights being extended to African Americans, but you also have a lot of oppression that's taking place as well. One of the things that we're doing is we're voting African Americans into elected office. So there's going to be about 2,000 that get elected. And we're in the state legislature. We have about 20 in the U.S. Congress. And there's going to be a backlash to African Americans gaining political power after Reconstruction ends. Okay. And it's the same backlash that we see today in 49 state legislatures and Republicans pushing 400 plus voter restriction bills based upon the big lie being pushed by Donald Trump. The same backlash that we see today is the same thing that happened that we saw, especially in the 1890s, 1880s, 1890s, etc. The war destroyed the institution of slavery, ensured the survival of the Union, and set in motion economic and political changes that laid the foundation for the modern nation. This is what historian Eric Foner said in the book Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. During Reconstruction, the United States made its first attempt to build an egalitarian society on the ashes of slavery. So we take you through our history. We look at Special Field Order number 15, 40 acres and a mule, what it was and what it was not, and how that land was taken back by President Andrew Johnson. We look at Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, Special Field Order, General Order number 3. We look at the three amendments to the U.S. Constitution, 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and 15th Amendment. We talk about people like Sarah Rector, who became the richest Afro-American girl in America in the early 1900s. And her family was of Creek Indian and enslaved Creek Indian ancestry in Oklahoma. And oil is going to be discovered on her land. Her family gets land because of those Black Freedmen and Indian Treaties of 1866 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887. And oil is going to be discovered on her land. She's going to become a millionaire. Okay, Sarah Rector. And the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, that plays into the history of, at least the foundation for the history of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. Because the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians all owned African slaves, and they get pushed off their land in southeastern United States in because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, and they go out west on what's known as the Trail of Tears, and they take their African slaves with them. Okay, so this ties in. So a lot of the early landowners, African-American landowners in Tulsa, Oklahoma, got land because of the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. Okay, so if you like this type of information, and it's a 10-week online course, we do the classes live. All the sessions are recorded. So as soon as you register, you can watch the class we did last week. You can join us in class today. We're going to start a little after 1 p.m. today. Normally, the class is on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We just posted the link here. You can register there. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Here's a flyer for it as well. Class is regularly $130. It's on sale $70 for very limited time only. Click right here and register here. It takes you to the next page. Next page is click on enroll. As soon as you register, you can join us in class, and you can watch the previous class. There's also bonus content, and you're going to get 6 bonus lectures from me also, okay, in digital download format. So you can register for this and join us in class. You can use this information with your children also. I would say the content is PG-13. I don't do a lot of cursing. It's not crazy, things like that. So you can use this with your children as well. Okay, so that's just a brief overview. Last class, we also talked about the Homestead Act of 1862, which gave about 270 million acres of land to, it gave away about 270 million acres of land from 1862 to, some sources say 1976, other sources say 1980. And we were largely shut out of those massive land giveaways. Okay. And we're going to see a redistribution of land after starting the beginning of the Civil War, but after the Civil War ends. Now, there were head rights given in the 1600s and 1700s. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about later. All right. We see the Southern Homestead Act of 1866, the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, which gave away, redistributed about 138 million acres of land. 2/3 of that went to white people. We look at something extremely important is the backlash to African Americans voting. Just like we see today, the backlash to African Americans voting. We connect all that history. So we look at things like the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890. And at that Mississippi State Convention in 1890, they said, we are here to exclude the Negro. We are here to exclude the Negro. We look at the political violence that was inflicted upon African Americans to suppress our vote, keep us from voting, scaring us away from the voter polls. Whether we talk about the Colfax massacre of 1873, whether we talk about the White League attacking African American voters in Eufaula, Alabama, November 1874. Okay, I mean, there's a deep history. We could look at the Vicksburg massacre of 1874 as well, Vicksburg, Mississippi. We could look at the Ocoee massacre of 1920, Opelousas massacre of 1868, Opelousas, Louisiana. There's a deep history of political violence being inflicted upon African Americans by white supremacists to keep us from voting. Okay, because they understood the power of our vote. And then when we look at the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890 and the Mississippi State Convention, African Americans were the majority of the population in Mississippi in 1880s, 1890s. And you had a minority of the population to then write into the state constitution poll taxes and literacy tests to suppress the African American vote. The first state to have poll taxes is going to be Florida in 1889. And there was a tax that you had to pay annually to be able to vote, poll tax. So a lot of African Americans cannot afford to pay the poll tax. In the literacy tests, were like in Mississippi, under the new literacy requirement, a potential voter had to be able to read any section of the Mississippi State Constitution or understand any section when read to him, or given a reasonable or gave a reasonable interpretation of any section. Well, many African Americans were illiterate. Okay, so you have these oppressive measures to get around the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed the right to vote to African American men. It's going to be later extended to African American women. At the 1890 Mississippi State Convention, a new constitution was adopted that included a literacy test and poll tax for eligible voters. James Vardaman in 1890, who served in the Mississippi State Legislature, said there is no use to equivocate or lie about the matter. Okay. He said, in Mississippi, we have in our constitution legislated against the racial peculiarities of the Negro. When the device fails, we will resort to something else. Now, at the state convention, it was presided over by a white county judge named Solomon Saladin Calhoun. And he said that the reason why they were there was to exclude the Negro. That was the whole purpose of the Mississippi State Convention. Basically, they said we are here to exclude the Negro, and they voted to change the Mississippi State Constitution and put these oppressive measures into it. Now, it became known as the Mississippi Plan. The Mississippi Plan was adopted by other Southern states like South Carolina in 1895, Louisiana 1898, Alabama 1901, and they're writing these different laws into their state constitutions as well. There's a good article here, how Jim Crow era laws suppressed the African American vote for generations, from history.com, official website of the History Channel. You're going to see things like all white primaries being used, okay, where African Americans are being excluded from voting in all white primaries, like all white primaries in Texas. So these are all things that we're going to see implemented to oppress African Americans, all these laws and policies, etc. All right. Okay, so this is just a sample of what we deal with in the class. We'll post a link here. You can join us in class today. You can register for it as soon as you read, and then also you can watch last week's class as well. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. You can watch them anytime, and even after the 10-week online course is over with. So like, say next year, you want to go back and relive the entire course because you liked it so much, you can watch the entire course, okay? From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Normally class meets on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today will start right around 1 p.m. We'll start a little later today. But it's a fantastic class. It's visual. We have a live text chat. You can ask questions in class also. And lastly, you can see me, I can't see you. So it's not like a Zoom call, like at your job, and you can see all the people, you know, there, and the little kids in the background and things like that, right? You can see me, I can't see you. So you don't have to worry about, you know, what you're wearing or doing your hair or anything like that, okay? All right. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have a special promotion going on. You get 20% off orders of $100 or more. All of my DVD lectures and digital downloads are there at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so it's a special promotion. Use promo code AHN20 off 2021. We have the information there. And then I'll be in Detroit at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, Sunday, September 26th, 3 p.m. for a screening and discussion of the film Hapi, which deals with the role of economics in the development of civilization. Dr. Leonard Jeffries will be here as well, and I'll be moderating the panel discussion. We're going to do a screening of the film from director Taki Grant. He'll be here. Felicia Hardin, co-executive producer, will be here. Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. So visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The information is there. Also, hapifilm.com. Click on the link. It takes you to the next page, and the tickets are $25. You just scroll down, and in the film, you have Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, you have Dr. Julian Malveaux. I was just on Roland Martin Unfiltered yesterday with Dr. Julian Malveaux. I'm a panelist every Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. A lot of people in the film, Dr. Wade Nobles, Jabari Osazi, Infodushi, Jehutimus Salim. We just had him on the show this week. We had Dr. Leonard Jeffries on this past Sunday for 2 hours. One of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So the tour is coming to Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Houston, Washington, D.C., Bridgeport, Connecticut. Click right here on tickets. Takes you to the next page, and you can purchase tickets. Okay, tickets are $25, includes the screening and panel discussion. We're going to have a good time. It's 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday, September 26th. All right, guys, look, we have to get out of here. I have to teach this class. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. Also, if you like this type of information and you want to support the African History Network in another way, you can do that as well. $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.